compassion for myself and all others. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. But before I do that, we have two panelists that are community members. These are United Way Bay Area ambassadors, and these are folks with lived experience with programs. And they share their expertise, they lend their expertise to United Way Bay Area so we can have direct community impact and input. So we're a little bit removed, right, from the programming that's happening on the ground. These are folks that help us to know what's happening, how they experience programs, how folks are showing up. So we're really excited to introduce them, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But we have Michael Evans, he's our United Way Bay Area ambassador from Solano County, and we can clap. Next we have Lupe Maldonado, who's the program director for Up Valley Family Center in Napa County. Next up, we have Cookie Powell, the Executive Director for Dixon Family Services. I'm realizing we didn't sit in the order. Next up, Chris Schultz with the Director of Housing Justice at Urban Habitat and Vallejo Housing Justice Coalition. And another United Way Bay Area Ambassador, Sherelle Carter. So, you all know that we're going to keep referring back to the Padlet. Please use the Padlet. Their bios are in the Padlet, so if you want to know more about who our panelists are, you can see their bios in the Padlet. But also, if you all have questions directly for folks, there is a place for you to put them in the Padlet. We like this because we get to take it back and see how this might impact how we do future events. And information, if we keep hearing some of the same things, we can use that to move forward. So please enter your questions in the tablet or the Padlet. If you are struggling with getting into that, don't worry. We will still open it up for questions. So if you can't get it in, it's okay. So I'm going to open it up to the panelists. We're going to start with Michael because he has the microphone. So if you can introduce yourself, where you live or work, and what you do.
What I do as
You do as an ambassador.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Michael Evans. I live in Solano. I live in Vallejo, South Vallejo. I'm a package handler at FedEx. And what I do as an ambassador is have monthly meetings and updates with what the community needs or how the community is affected and how I see that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lupe Maldonado. I am the program director for Up Valley Family Centers. We're a family resource center based in the red areas of the data that was shown. So that includes Calistoga, Santa Elena, Pope Valley, and England. Those are the main communities that we serve. We're based in Napa County. Our agency has been in existence for about 23 years now. We're a nonprofit. And I do want to point out that we're the only family resource center in our community. We have other family resource centers in the city of Napa, but not in our community. So we're pretty much it for all those that live in the northern Napa County. I actually happen to live in one of the red zone areas. I live in the community of England, so I understand the need and I see the need every day as I commute to work. And I'm glad to be here speaking about our experience in Napa County.
Hi, I'm Cookie Powell, and I stand for truth, justice, and the American way. And I work at Dixon Family Services. We were established in 1984, and through the years, we have had many different types of programs that mostly were driven by community need, but sometimes, unfortunately, we've swayed from our mission in order to chase funding and create a little bit of mission creep there. I think everyone in the room knows what that is. But right now, and since the pandemic started, we're focusing on basic needs for families. And that includes help with their rent, their utilities, food. We have our own food pantry, and we serve people every day. Everything really increased. I mean, the need for all the things that we do increased so much with the pandemic, and we never closed. I'm very proud of that. I think that's enough.
Hi everybody, my name's Chris Schultz. I'm the Director of Housing Justice at Urban Habitat. And my values are racial equity, social justice, connection, and dignity for all. Urban Habitat has been around for about 33 years. We were founded and based in Oakland, California as a regional racial equity organization. So we work throughout the 9-county Bay Area to support leadership development, to support policy advocacy, and to help support community organizing, particularly in the outer regions of the Bay Area. So recognizing that race, class, and power are not distributed equitably in this region, and how do we support the capacity building and the efforts of those in communities, people most impacted, to be able to make decisions for themselves and improve their communities and their communities for everybody.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sherelle Carter. I stand for holistic healing and well-being, basic human rights, and balance in everyday life. I am an employee of the local school district in Fairfield, FSUSD, and I operate as a community outreach liaison. And I'm also a member of United Way Bay Area's Ambassador Program, where I do attend those monthly meetings and, gain knowledge. They've taught me a lot already. I've learned a bit about public speaking. We're working on a grant now for college students, and I'm gaining a lot of insight and sitting at tables that I wouldn't have necessarily been afforded the opportunity to in, I guess, everyday life. But yes, that's it.
All right, so I'm going to ask a couple of questions for the panelists. Anyone can answer, and then I have some specific questions for individual panelists. So the first question is the first question is, what initial thoughts or reactions do you have about the findings from this Bay Area Economic Stability Funding Study? Do the findings align with what you are experiencing in your communities? And was there anything surprising or unexpected in the results?
This is my first time seeing the data listed as is, and I, as an average community member that does not operate in a nonprofit at this time, seeing the data and the numbers, like the difference between Solano and Napa County versus San Francisco, that was surprising and alarming to me, because it was interesting to see that although certain regions have high populations, there still isn't as proportionate funding given in certain areas. So it's concerning and it's alarming. Gotta fill in that gap.
Yeah, I think we discussed this a little at our table, that it is concerning, alarming, and not surprising that this is data. We've seen Solano Community Foundation and others have been putting out data for years that has shown that funding gap between what we're receiving here in Solano County, Napa County, compared to San Francisco and some other urban core areas. Urban Habitat, it also really aligns with research that we've been doing. So starting back in 2016, we also did a report looking at changes in County Bay Area and how that aligned or didn't align with where resources were going in those communities. And so even back then, we saw how much Solano County in particular was being under-resourced, even as we were seeing the impacts of the foreclosure crisis, the impacts of really decades of disinvestment in this region and what that meant for low-income communities of color, families of color who are struggling here. And coming out of that research back in 2016 is partly why we started talking to funders regionally to invest more out here. We're able to pull together some resources to support some initial work in Vallejo, and I forgot to mention, we have our Vallejo Housing Justice Coalition, our senior organizer here. But since 2019, we've been supporting tenant organizing, renter organizing in Vallejo as a part of starting to build up capacity, starting to bring more of these resources that are so badly needed to Vallejo and parts of Solano County. And then I did just want to flag, I think I've heard that it's in the Padlet already, so this technology thing, which is great because I didn't bring print copies for everybody, but you can find this report on Padlet, which is a report we released last fall on regional resegregation, which is an update on our 2016 report. So includes new data analysis in addition to kind of interviews and qualitative findings that support very much what we just saw this morning around those changes in demographics. Where are the high need areas in the Bay Area, and then where are there lack of resources going to support the services, the advocacy, the organizing that's needed to really ensure our communities can thrive. So you can look for this on your Padlet.
I'll just briefly add that, no surprise, Solano County has been disproportionately funded for forever. I understand people who are new to this business are surprised. Those of us that have been around for a while, we know it's always been this way. And there have been attempts to come up with ways to change that, but we haven't found that yet. We've tried several things. I won't go into that, but I just want to say that Dixon, our problems stem from poverty, high unemployment, and lack of housing. I should have said lack of housing, number one. That is the number one problem for us to help people. Because back when I first started in 1995, we would have a family come to us that was all of a sudden homeless, just got evicted. Well, they couldn't maintain the rent they were paying, so we would just help them find something else that they could afford, better with the incomes that they have. Well, that's no more. That doesn't exist anywhere. So that's the number one problem for people in Solano County is housing, lack of housing.
Speaking from the Napa County perspective, in particular to the communities of Calistoga, Angwin, and Pope Valley, this is the reason why our FRC was created, because again, we didn't have these resources 24 years ago. And so we do continue to see funding gaps. I think it was mentioned earlier, the wildfires definitely opened the door to us for new opportunities for funding sources. But that was a one-time funding source. It's not ongoing. So we have responded to wildfires since 2015 when the Lake County fire broke down. All the Lake County residents came to Calistoga and we opened up an evacuation center. Since then, we've been pretty active in responding to wildfires. And that, although it's a disaster, it brings opportunities for us for funding. But again, it's a one-time assistance. So I think in Napa County, we do experience, private foundations in the Bay Area are not allowing us to apply for their funding. And so that's a huge gap for us. In Calistoga, 80% of the students at the public school are free and reduced lunch. That tells us a lot, about the need in our community. We do work with partner agencies in the city of Napa that offer services to our clients in the Up Valley region. But access is something that we haven't really mentioned, right? It takes 23 miles for our older adults to get to the city of Napa. We want these services in our communities and available to clients. Recently, we were dealing with the snow. Who would have thought that we were gonna deal with snow, right? In Napa County, we're very prepared for fires, but not snow. Communities in Angwin and Pope Valley were without power for 3 days. You know what Valley Family Centers did? We went to those communities. We were stationed at their schools providing gift card assistance to replace the food that was lost in refrigerators. So, and again, Angwin, Pope Valley, that's in the red zone with higher needs. So access is something else that we have to address, right? Being there for the communities that are most vulnerable.
It's not surprising to me at all, especially since what I find a lot of times when I am reaching out for support, I find that a lot of sources that I connect with, there's not a lot of emotional support. Like to talk to somebody on the phone and say, yeah, I need help with my housing because I'm on the verge of being evicted. And you're like, oh, I can't give you no money. Or refer you to a website. I'm like, okay, this is very helpful. And it's like, just the lack of emotional support is just, I'm speechless at it sometimes. Like, I really don't know what to say.
Thank you all so much for answering. Can you hear me? That's it? Okay, great. I appreciate this a lot. I think, as was mentioned earlier, this data, I've been repeating this data for years. When the first report came out, just been saying it. And I'm like, yeah, Solano County, it's like the least resourced. So when I'm trying to advocate for more resources to come to Napa and Solano counties, that's the data that I was using. So, I mean, it's good to know that I've been repeating it, so it's good to know, like, I'm telling the truth. But also, it's really sad, that was mentioned earlier, that this is what's happening. It's been consistent over, I think someone said over the past 20 years, it's just continuing. So I appreciate how all of you answered. I'm gonna ask you one more question, and then we're gonna go to individual questions. So, for you all to be able to explain, what are some bright spots, maybe in your communities, of different kinds of projects or programs or services that have great impact but need more resources?
SparkPoint. I've been a member of SparkPoint for Arkansas County I've been a member since 2011, so 12 years. And they helped me pay my rent once. My rent, just on a personal note, is $3,300 a month to live in a townhouse in Porter. And the people there, after a while, they get robotic and have told us that they're not going to help us and push back our rent date. And there are a lot of problems with our apartment. I'm not going into that later. But SparkPoint has been very helpful, along with the gift cards for being an ambassador. So I'm very appreciative of.
I did not pay him to say that.
You didn't have to. You didn't have to.
I think from a Valley Family Center's perspective, just our presence in Calistoga, we're a trusted agency providing, a variety of services for young children up to our older adults or senior. And working with partners and advocating for access to resources in our community is something that we do every day. And I think also, safety net resources are well needed in our community. Napa County is known for wine country, no issues, everything's beautiful, tourists, spas. But there's this underlying issue. Clearly the data demonstrates that, right? Our numbers are red. There's definitely a lot of need in our community. But no one's speaking about it, right? Because we see this pretty picture of Napa County as a wine country where tourists come, there's no poverty. Yet we see it every day at our FRC. And so I think in terms of programs, just everything that we offer and continue to be there for our community and their community is very important.
Well, in thinking of a bright spot, it seems almost ironic to say COVID in the same sentence, but the pandemic did increase foundation grants for Dixon Family Services. I'm not sure about countywide, but I think with the meetings that I go to, our sister family resource centers meet with at the Children's Network. And from what I've heard, it's similar in the other cities in Solano County too, that for my own example is foundations that we had never even heard of or that were just formed because of COVID, like Travis Credit Union Foundation and some others that reached out to me and asked me to just answer a few questions so that they could give us $20,000 or $25,000. And so that happened in 2020, 2021, 2022. I'm interested to see how it goes now that the perception is that COVID is over, to see if that stays at that level. Lori asked, it would be good to see what the data is from 2020 and beyond. But a bright spot too is that more and more entities or people with money, to put it simply, have decided to give nonprofits funding, or not give it to us, but allow us to apply for rental assistance and utilities assistance for families that are struggling to pay their bills. That's a big improvement from when I first started. We only had, United Way of the Bay Area, and we had Season of Sharing, the San Francisco Chronicle funds that. And of course, HEAT's been around for a long time. Now they're actually paying water bills in addition to electric bills, but it seems like more and more, like Lori mentioned, UWBA, there's FEMA, there's Kaiser, a lot of different foundations are now setting aside money that we can apply for clients that need a direct payment of their rent or their other bills.
Thank you. And I think we've seen that there's been an increase in emergency assistance in part due to COVID, and I think we would all agree it's still not enough.
Oh, yeah.
It's still not enough, and we don't know how long. Well, we know it won't last long enough either, right? Many of those funds are already depleted or won't be continuing. A lot of our protections are ending at the end of the state emergency declaration last month. And so in terms of the bright spots, I think we can point to what we've been able to do with the funding just in the last few years with the work of the Vallejo Housing Justice Coalition and now our Vallejo Leadership Cohort. We have 13 leaders in the city of Vallejo, residents, tenants, renters, who are being trained up in leadership skills, in speaking publicly, in knowing their rights as tenants, and knowing how to talk to their neighbors, build tenant associations, build up kind of collective power to be able to advocate for what they need. And that's the sort of thing that can have lasting impact for years. And we've seen already in some of the initial things that we were able to do with bringing on our first organizer just before COVID hit, but in talking with tenants in their buildings, being able to connect them to resources, but also connect them to each other and to organize to be able to fight back against rent gouging that was happening in the early days of the pandemic, and to pass a anti-rent gouging ordinance, right, and get that extended. So we've seen some real incredible progress that happened, and in moments of crisis, maybe a moment of clarity of, we actually do have the resources and we do have the political will to do what's necessary. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. And so I think the question is, how do we build that momentum? How do we maintain that momentum? And maybe a little bit of self-reflection of why is it that it took a global pandemic for us to be willing to open up and do those things that our communities have been needing for years and for decades, right? And I think that means looking closely at what is the history and the reality of racism, of sexism. Today on International Women's Day, we have to look at who is most impacted by housing insecurity in our communities. And it's not just people of color, women of color, it is Black women face the highest eviction rates in our communities, face the highest levels of housing insecurity. And why is that? And what are we doing to really support, not just during times of fires, natural disasters, global pandemics, but for the long run to ensure that people have economic security in the long term, right? And I think that comes through the leadership development, the organizing, the advocacy work, to make sure that we have enduring resources and enduring institutions that is building that leadership.
Thank you. I would say some bright spots that I've experienced personally is for sure Spark Point, which led into United Way Bay Area. Also, First Five and the Child Healthy Family Solano. They have been a benefit. I work really closely with the Family Resource Center here in Solano County and some other beneficial organizations I could say are ARC and Convening.
Thanks so much, you all. It's really great to hear about a lot of the work that's happening and some of the work that continues to need to happen. So I'm going to start with you, Sherelle, since you have the mic. Can you tell us what does it mean for you when services and resources are underfunded or there are not enough available where you live? What happens and what does that mean for you as a community member?
Bear with me, please. I had a conversation with a friend of mine recently who is actively living in the newfound limbo of receiving housing assistance and resources to having those same benefits stripped away after the shutdown. So this is what she shared. Take a minute to just kind of visualize this. I feel uncovered, like I have nowhere to turn when I need help in a difficult situation. I feel like I'm in a desert, like I can't find water, I can't find shade, I can't find any relief. After a while, you start to feel hopeless. Her circumstances are unique because she is a single mother raising a teenage son with special needs. She reached out to a multitude of resources within our community, and due to her particular circumstances, no program or organization was able to provide both her and her son with the assistance that they were in need of. I also serve as a community outreach liaison with the local school district, and in this role, I assist students and their families that may be facing housing insecurity. There have been instances where families have had to sleep in their cars because no hotel vouchers were available during the time that they were down on their luck. In other instances, there were kiddos missing school on occasion because of financial hardship pulling on the family's ability to have reliable transportation. There are some great programs and organizations here in Solano County, but the depth to which they are able to help, the accessibility and frequency is just not sufficient. It's not effective enough. The issue is not the organizations and the resources that are already established. From my experience, it's the criteria for participating, the inconsistent availability or funding of those resources, and the duration or longevity of the assistance. I believe in order to really impact community members, there needs to be constant access to assistance. And that we intentionally target like the 5 modes or phases of the human experience. I don't know who touched on it earlier, but emotional support, physical, cognitive, social, cultural, emotional, like once the fundamental modes are addressed and stabilized, life skills, training, and further education can be introduced. My friend said it best, when you struggle with everyday costs of living because you can't find a job with a decent wage, you need resources to aid you in obtaining higher education and other skills. Maybe even a community center with free budgeting classes and nutrition training would help prevent health issues. As a single parent myself and sole provider for my household, I consider myself extremely fortunate. I work 2.5 jobs, full-time plus some. And that does not include parenting my son when my job is all said and done. As an individual, I receive housing assistance as well as child care subsidy, two of the greatest expenses for myself personally right now. It is a blessing to not have to worry about whether or not I can afford child care, which leans into the blessing of not having to call out of work due to lack of funds for child care, leading to less funds earned in my household. It's a delicate and stressful balance scheme to walk on a daily basis, and I'm grateful I don't have to worry. The lack of that stressor allows me to maintain wellness and show up as my best self to serve in the community in the manner that I do. I serve as an ambassador with UWBA area, and I participate in their Spark Point program. And I also serve as a co-facilitator for the Salvation Army's Croc Center. That's another resource that is like a bright side to churches. Somebody mentioned that, thank you. They have been a great help as well. A co-facilitator at the Salvation Army's Croc Center Single Moms Ministry Group. I'm so grateful to now be a partner with Habitat for Humanity because this is kind of an escape route for me and my son to stop having to walk the tightrope and balance being because this will alleviate us from the fluctuation in rental prices and the inconsistent and non-existent support from property managers and leasing agents. I'm grateful to have reached the space in my journey that I have in this year. It has not been an easy road, nor is it finished. As I mentioned before, walking this balance beam is complicated, and the complexities of survival induce stress or intense pressure due to a person's well-being. I feel the most efficient strategy to cultivate well-being in anything is not to focus on the symptoms or the reactions, to put a visual to it like the leaves of a tree, but to address the root of the issue and allow for the plants or the being as a whole to become well from the foundation onward. This would empower individuals to maintain well-being and inspire growth, elevation, and aspirational thinking. I believe that navigating this life experience has drawn new vision and aspiration from me. I have a dream to kind of fill out some of the gaps that have been addressed now with a nonprofit of my own, so I'm glad to be here, seeing this data, meeting with other people who are actually running nonprofits right now to see, what gaps exist and how I can rise up to be of assistance in those areas. So be on the lookout for the Healing Hub, and if you know any resources available, please contact me. Check the Padlet. Increasing funds in Solano County is necessary because in order to have a healthy, safe, and functioning community, people's basic needs have to be met. There are organizations in place that are essential. Many of those said programs and organizations are underfunded and therefore not able to execute at their optimum level, thus leaving a gap of underserved community members. With the needed resources for our county and the county, the population here would be and feel more supported. This would foster feelings of security and stability. Once citizens were on a stable foundation, they would have more aspirational thoughts, and voids and gaps that are present right now during their growth process will be identified and addressed, leading to the formation of more programs, more resources, more organizations to encompass the areas that were missed or overlooked in previous years. So it's kind of like, domino effect. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherelle. Your story is powerful, and we will help. So for Chris, within the housing justice sphere, what are organizations not able to prioritize as they come up against funding gaps?
Yeah, first, I just want to say that was so incredibly moving. Thank you for being vulnerable, sharing your story and sharing your experiences. And I hope everybody in this room took note of your aspirations and dreams of what you're building in your community, and we're all here to support making that happen. Thank you. In terms of what does the lack of funding mean, what can't be supported? I mean, that's such a huge question, right? And the needs in housing, as we've heard, housing is foundational to everything. Housing is foundational to health, to your family's well-being, to education, to economic stability. And the housing insecurity that people are facing in Vallejo, in Solano, in Napa County, throughout this whole region is so severe. One of the greatest in the country, really. One of the greatest housing crises in the country is happening here in front of our eyes. And I think those of you who do the work every day, and for our organizer talking to tenants in buildings, we see it from renters. We see renters who are struggling with, you know, in this day, in 2023, dealing with mold, with mushrooms growing out of the walls, with evictions, with harassment, with, frankly, corporate landlords and management companies that are more concerned with you know, ensuring their investors get their profits than with ensuring that people have a safe and dignified place to live. And that's the reality here. Those are the stories that we're hearing and seeing every single day. And I'm seeing head nods. I think those are the stories that you all are seeing every day as well. And so what could more funding do? What can't, you know, what are we not able to do because of the lack of funding? Well, first I'll say we do have incredible resources and strengths and assets, and that's in the people. That it is so incredible and courageous what people are doing, risking their own safety to stand up with their neighbors and talk to landlords and confront management companies and demand safe and dignified housing. So we have a lot. We have a lot in our community members and our residents, in the leaders who we're all working on building and developing and working with every day. What we don't have, that the slides have shown, is resources, but even that actually, I want to say, we are an incredibly wealthy nation, an incredibly wealthy state, an incredibly wealthy region, right? Our region alone is one of the wealthiest areas in the world. And so lack of resources is really a question of lack of political will to put resources towards what needs to be funded, where those resources need to go. So I think even as we're looking at the disparities of how little resources we're getting here compared to other parts of the Bay Area, we can also look at how much resources there are here that are not being directed towards meeting community needs here in the Bay Area, in this region, in this state, and fighting for that. A couple things in particular that I'll name. We're doing the organizing work in Vallejo that could easily have a dozen people doing that organizing, and there still wouldn't be enough staff to talk to all of the residents, to work with all the residents, to provide resources. So certainly more funding for organizers, more funding for the emergency assistance that we've talked about. We all saw how helpful that was during COVID and how it wasn't even enough for people back then, that it wasn't just the emergency of the pandemic that was causing people struggling to pay their rent. It was structural inequities in our housing systems, and those structural inequities haven't gone away. So the assistance has gone away, and that's a big challenge. But also, how are we taking on building a more equitable housing system here in Solano County? We desperately need more affordable housing, permanently affordable, deeply affordable housing. And that is one of the projects that we're doing. We do not only leadership development, tenant organizing, building tenant associations in buildings, but also supporting the creation of a community land trust here in Vallejo, the Vallejo CLT. Which is something that has been shown around the country. Community land trusts, they're a model that come from the civil rights era in the South. In Georgia was the first CLT. They've grown throughout the country and have been shown to be an incredibly powerful tool for particularly low-income people, families making 30% AMI, families who might not otherwise be able to, but to afford home ownership. It is a pathway to ownership and economic stability, but it's one that requires investment and support. And so
I might not be able to pay your rent this month, but I can listen to you and I can understand where you're coming from. because I've been there, and that's what we all need to remember to keep doing. Remember where you've been, how the systems worked for you, and how it can then help others.
Thank you so much, Christina. You were not negative at all. And I appreciate having the confirmation. I'm going to ask Lupe about your specific experience working in Napa County, particularly with farm workers. We know that's a vulnerable population. So they're at Up Valley with farm workers in Polk Valley and Angwin and Napa. What are the resources or services or programs that don't have enough resources specifically for farm workers in those communities?
I think our experience in working with, farm workers who are making wine country beautiful, right? They're the ones that are, picking up the grapes and producing that wine. Safety net resources, there have been increase in rent increases in our county, but that hasn't matched the wage increase to those farm workers. So there's clearly a disparity between the wages and the cost of living in Napa County, and particularly to our farm workers. We haven't even talked about undocumented folks. A lot of these folks are undocumented, and they're not eligible for government-sponsored programs. I can't send a referral for an undocumented folk to go apply for unemployment benefits because they can't. And so what happens with those folks, they come in knocking on our door during the off season. These are seasonal workers. When it's raining, they can't work, so they can't bring in money to pay their rent. So safety net resources, not a one-time assistance, a couple months of assistance, right? Because we're glad we're getting the rain, but some of these seasonal workers don't like it because they can't work. So I think it's definitely safety net resources. I think also long-term goals with creating financial stability for these folks. I talked about lack of increasing wages. So I'm speaking again about the response to the wildfire because Up Valley Family Centers, alongside with another partner agency in the city of Napa, thanks to our local community foundation, we created a construction trades program in hopes that some of these farm workers would benefit to help increase those wages. So any services that promote long-term financial stability for our farm workers is something that is needed in our communities because clearly they can't pay $4,000 of rent.
Thank you, Lupe. It's really important that we're highlighting this community because we all benefit. Many of us like the wine that we're drinking, but recognizing how we're supporting the community that's helping to make sure that you can drink that fancy wine on your table. Before we go to Michael, I'm going to give the panelists, because there's one question in the Padlet, so I'm going to read it for you so you have some time to think about it. And then I'm going to bring Michael in. So the question is on advocacy in the Padlet, and it's how are you advocating as individuals for your community, and what are your advocacy goals? So that's the question in the Padlet, but we're going to ask Michael first, and I'll give you some time to think about an answer. Michael, I'm going to ask you a similar question to Sherelle. As a community member, someone that lives in Solano County, can you help or share with us what does it mean for you when services and resources are underfunded and there are not enough of them available in your community?
It makes me think a lot of the lack of emotional support I've had throughout my life. Seeing how certain patterns repeat. The transportation out in Vallejo I find very horrible. Like if I catch the bus, say at 11, I have to plan to spend my whole day waiting on the bus. And how the bus service ends anywhere, especially like on Saturdays, anywhere from 6 p.m. to 9. And on Sundays, most of the buses do not run. I was here, I lived in Vallejo as a kid, 1-bedroom house with 9 people. And it seems like a lot of the services, at least with the transportation, has gotten worse. Last week, or last couple of weeks, I missed work because of back pains. And the type of work I do at FedEx is package handling, so I lift a lot of heavy packages for a few hours before you find people who live in this region. I called medical center, basic clinic. They said I couldn't get an appointment until April 12th. And that the best way for me to be able to see a doctor was to do a walk-in. And I'm heavily reliant on my spiritual guidance. Because through spirit, I've learned that a lot of people have been helpful. And one of my friends, in fact, my oldest friend, he lives out here not too far away in America, like the borderline of Vallejo, American Canyon. He took me to the clinic. I'm like thinking, no, this shouldn't take too long. Just go in, go out. It took me 4 hours to see the doctor. Just to get a doctor's note. And I was just like, oof, I've never seen anything like this. And with housing, as I mentioned before, I live in a townhouse, so it's like a community-based, what do you call it? You just want to say project, I guess you could say, or housing complex. And I paid $3,300 a month with my 2 younger brothers. And that fluctuates because of utilities. At this place, we can't get anything fixed. Our stove is broke. We still can use it, but I had to take the glass door off so it wouldn't break. And they tell us that if we don't start paying the rent by the 3rd, they're going to evict us. But then tell us that they can't fix anything because they're 3 months behind fixing stuff. And luckily I did look at my lease and I did find that if you find hazardous projects or hazardous repairs unfixed, you can withhold your rent. We took this place because we couldn't find anywhere else at the time. Me and my youngest brother was living in a hotel for when I joined him, it was about 8 months, but he had been living there, he lived there a year, I lived there 8 months. And I'm calling people I know to borrow money to get out of this place. Because come to find out, the week that we're preparing to get up out of this place, I'm learning how to drive. A friend of mine was teaching me how to drive and his tire popped. And I get back to the hotel hours later and come to find out there was a 3rd shooting there. And the desk clerk, one of the desk clerks who was there, he had been shot and killed by his girlfriend. Just the getting back again just to the lack of emotional connection that I find with a lot of people. Having to depend on my mother, who is severely suffering from MS, for help with rent, because I haven't been able to work, or at FedEx, it's part-time, I can't always pay my rent. And that's a whole nother story in itself because of having to overcome a lot of the emotional damage that I felt from her and my father throughout my life. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing. Thank you for highlighting what the needs are in the community. I think it speaks to where you said you couldn't find housing. Like, it's the fact that we can help with rental assistance, but it doesn't negate the fact that there's no housing, and how do we find housing, and affordable housing for the community members? I really appreciate it.
And also just difficult to find a job here in Vallejo. Like, I've had to go either to American Canyon or Fairfield, and then having to catch Uber, which runs anywhere from $10 to $30. Like, it's $10 for a mile travel, or $30 to travel from here to Fairfield. And that would eat up my pay, and I have nothing for rent, barely.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate that. So I am out of time, and I heard your advocacy question, and I'm sorry. If anyone, maybe like 30 seconds, if you had a chance to think about it, or we can end. Just some of the advocacy, like what are your advocacy goals, if anyone wants to share? Go.
Actually, I hate to do this, but it's to answer another question that you didn't ask me. And I mean, I wear many hats at my organization now. I'm the executive director, I'm the bookkeeper, I'm the marketing person, I'm the grant writer, I'm so many things that I can't take on advocacy, but I will sign on when someone like United Way or California Family Resource Association sends me something to add my name or to a template letter, I can do that to answer that question. But I just wanted to say, when there's lack of funding, when there's not enough, it makes you feel like you have to become like God. You have to figure out who is more important to help than the other, and that's not a good feeling. And that's what comes with the lack of resources.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. Thank you all so much. It's like, I know that we promised we would get you all out, so thank you. Thanks to our panelists, you all. If you want, I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
Give us our email, you will get an email because we love to email you. And road trip with us out there to hear about other things. So that's all I have. Thank you for letting me be your mistress of ceremonies, and I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Zwick, CEO of United Way Bay Area, for some closing thoughts.
Thank you, Laura. I want to just really appreciate the panelists and everyone who shared their thoughts, their perspectives, their insights. Can we give one more round of applause for our amazing panelists? So my name is Kevin Zwick, and I'm the CEO of United Way Bay Area. I stand for justice, equity, the importance of showing up, and the power of the nonprofit sector to solve really difficult challenges in our community. I just want to take 1 second to say, I've been the CEO of United Way Bay Area for almost the last 3 years, but my entire career has sort of circled the Bay in the nonprofit sector, from working at direct food assistance programs in Oakland, to community organizing in San Francisco, to working on economic microfinance in San Jose, and then for 20 years working in nonprofits on affordable housing in Alameda County, Contra Costa County, and the entire region. So coming to United Way Bay Area is truly full circle, and being in rooms like this and doing this work, centering the importance of impact is something that makes me proud to be at United Way Bay Area and proud to be in partnership with all of you. So can you all give yourselves a round of applause for the amazing hard work you do every day. You know, the research that Applied Survey Research did, what strikes me is just, and I don't want to get away from it, just the significant inequities in funding across our highest need areas. The fact that Napa and Solano County receive the least amount of philanthropic funding, less than 1% overall of the philanthropic dollars, is just something that cannot be highlighted enough. Like, we need to shine a light on that. We need to not allow ourselves to not be angered by the connection between Solano County having the least amount of investment in any county and the highest proportion of Black and African American residents. You know, as CEO of United Way Bay Area, I get to be in a lot of rooms. I get to be in a lot of rooms where people actually need examples of the persistent and systemic racism in our region, and I think surveys like this just have unrefutable proof and inspire me, and it should inspire all of us to continue to fight for racial equity in our region. I wanted to share some of my takeaways from that amazing panel. I want to thank Cookie for bringing her perspective around how this is the situation in Solano and Napa as a result of decades of disinvestment. From Lupe, thank you for sharing that how there's oftentimes only one-time interest in funding, but then funders say your county's not part of their region and pass the buck to somebody else, as well as reminding us about barriers that our undocumented neighbors face. Thank you for bringing that into the room. Michael, thank you so much for sharing your story and the importance of the need for emotional support. It's a consequence of harm and trauma, and how people need to get the help that they need. And also, what you shared about how our transit, housing, and job centers are completely misaligned, and how that burden falls heaviest on those who already have the most challenges. Chris, thank you for talking about the bright spot of the power of our renter communities and building collective power, and how people are using their voice at great risk to themselves. And we want to work with you on more of these issues, especially the right to counsel, for people to make sure that they have access to the legal rights to make sure that people can stay in their community and stop being displaced. And then Cheryl, thank you for telling us about your story and the story of others, and the need for constant access to assistance, and how we need to lower or remove barriers to that assistance. So thank you to the panel. Thank you for sharing your insights. I wanted to echo Nicole's point too, about the call for more resources in our community. And I want to challenge all of ourselves. I know I have to challenge myself all the time to not go into the scarcity mindset, and to think that helping one community is at the expense of another community. We need to have a mindset of abundance. This is an issue of power. It's an issue of making sure people organize and advocate for their resources, the resources that they deserve. And we need to do this by growing the pie bigger, not trying to cut up the pie into smaller slices, or try to take one community slice at the expense of somebody else's. And here at United Way Bay Area, we're here for this. We're here for this challenge. But I do want to just recognize a comment that was made around folks have been coming to tables, to events like this for 20 years and hearing a lot of the same things. And I heard that, I hear the challenge, and I appreciate that perspective, that you can't just come and talk. Actions speak louder than words, and making commitments lead to us being able to take collective action together. United Way in the Bay Area has taken many forms over the year, responding to community needs and working on the issues that neighbors just like everyone in this room does. United, we do want to take collective action together and to work hard to address the inequitable systems we see in the Bay Area. One way that is guiding our work, Kelly mentioned our strategic plan, our new strategic plan that's on our website, and I really invite everyone to take a look at it. We have 4 pillars that we're focusing on, and one of those 4 pillars is on regionalism. What we can do to expand and strengthen partnerships and increase our presence in all 8 counties that we serve, and doing it equitably, which leads us to another goal that I hope we're demonstrating today, which is the importance of data collection and data analysis, and helping and letting data, particularly disaggregated data around race, guide our focus on racial equity. So both of those goals I think have been really relevant for our conversation today and these convenings overall. So more to come on all of this as we continue to work together. I just want to close by saying another round of thanks. Can everyone on United Way Bay Area staff who worked on putting on this event stand? And can we all give you a big round of applause? Thank you all so much for being here today, being in community with us, and inviting us in and inviting us into advocacy and action together. Let's live united. Thank you.